Wolfing when it's wartime. Niggas love the clout chase, that's the shit they glorify. I don't even try hard, this gangsta shit immortalized. No records of a trace when your crime is organized. No man is over me, I'm highest in the morning time. Low key in the birds when I cross the state borderlines. Spin your block and horrified. Fuck your bitch, you mortified. I'm standing where you draw the line, nigga, hold the line. My nutsack, I'm grabbing mine, both of mine, quit holding mine. You gon' get this work and some overtime, you know the vibe. Little nigga, you know it's me. I don't need them to notice me. When conflict get crucial, I can't help but do them bogusly. Smoke you like a stogie, beat you like you stole from me. Niggas out of body, put you back where you supposed to be. I shoot at you waking in the moment, niggas toast for you. My niggas do the most for me, that's what they supposed to do.
All the smoke, nigga, cut the shit you think you bad enough and test. And you know how I'm coming, I ain't ducking nothing. You know when I pull up on your block, it's bustin'. You know how I'm coming, if you came with me. You know what's going, stop playing with me. I want all the smoke, nigga, cut the shit you think you bad enough and test. And you know how I'm coming, I ain't ducking nothing. You know when I pull up on your block, it's bustin'. You know how I'm coming, if you came with me, gang. You know what's going, stop playing with me.
Real gangsters move critically when that shit get critical. No peace amongst enemies, no pity for the pitiful. Real nigga down to the bones and the minerals. Stick to the G code, I never told another soul. True to the literature, now salute the general. Kill you on your birthday, dance out on your funeral. It ain't about the clout chase, I'm a man of principle. Niggas out of body, now they body isn't critical. Cradle to the casket, the life we live is typical. God body, cause I will depart you from your physical. Niggas living fantasies, act like they was the only one. Don't talk to me about these streets, fuck you think you know me from. Just cause you related to them gangsters, that don't make you one. I ain't got no bloodline in these streets, but I can spill me some. I ain't got no mercy for this bitch, that she outside with us. They on demon time, we bring them hell and the fire with us.
All the smoke, nigga, cut the shit you think you bad enough to test. And you know how I'm coming, I ain't ducking nothing. You know when I pull up on your block, it's bustin'. You know how I'm coming, and you came with me. You know what's going, stop playing with me. I want all the smoke, nigga, cut the shit you think you bad enough to test. And you know how I'm coming, I ain't ducking nothing. You know when I pull up on your block, it's bustin'. You know how I'm coming, and you came with me, gang. You know what's going, stop playing with me.
What's good? Shalom, shalom. What's up? What's good? Right, I know y'all see the title. We back at it again, you know. Keeping up with this. Hold on, real quick. day. Yeah, back at it though. Yeah, keeping up with the story of the Maccabees, right? As we celebrate this holiday, right? Being the first day of what we call the Feast of Dedication, better known as Hanukkah. So yeah, we back at it. You know what I'm saying? Black History BC. A Maccabean story of the 7 candlesticks. Right? We're gonna get into it. Because again, like we like to do around this time. Get into our history, right? Our own history, our ancient history. Because we have very deep roots. You know what I'm saying? And sadly, some of our people think our history just start on the west coast of Africa or on the cotton fields in Mississippi somewhere, right? But no, we have a deep and rich history, right? So yeah, we're gonna get back into it. So of course, giving all praises to the Most High God, we do so in His only begotten Son, Yahweh Shai, right? Who the world, better known as Jesus Christ. So let's get we're gonna jump right into it. Let's go to hold on, Salakia real quick. Salakia. Hold on, really quick. Salakia. I got it. Yeah, we're gonna get right into Maccabees. First Maccabees. We'll start in chapter 3. All right, where we had read chapter 2, so we're gonna start in where we left off at chapter 3. Alright, cool. So yeah, great story. We're gonna try to read as much of the stuff as possible, right? We're not gonna probably read, the whole, book of Maccabees like that. But we're gonna try to, read enough, right? So yeah, let's start with chapter 3. Then it says, then his son Judas, called Maccabeus, rose up and stood, and all his brethren helped him. So that they that held with his father, they fought with cheerfulness in battle of Israel. So he built up the army, and had a lot of loyal soldiers with him, even the ones that fought with his father, right? And it says, so he got his people great honor and put on a breastplate as a giant and girded his warlike harness about him. And he made battles protecting the host with the sword. Right? So, he was a defender of Israel. He fought against, the persecution of the Greeks, and defended the people. And it says, in his acts he was like a lion, and like a lion well warring for his prey. For he persecuted the wicked and sought them out and burnt up those that vexed his people. Wherefore the vexed shrunk for fear of him, and all of the workers of iniquity were troubled, because salvation prospered in his hand. Because he was going around doing his thing, right? And the Lord was with him. He wanted to make Israel great again. And the Most High was with him. And he was going around, reestablishing, the law and putting things back in order, right? And it says, he grieved also many kings, and made Jacob glad with his acts, and his memorial is blessed forever. Moreover, he went through the cities of Judah, destroying the ungodly out of them, and turning away wrath from Israel, so that he was renowned unto the utmost parts of the earth, and he received unto him such as were ready to perish. Then Apollonius gathered the Gentiles together in a great host out of Samaria to fight against Israel. So here comes this guy, want to make battle with us, right? Trying to fight against us, right? And it says, which thing when Judas perceived, he went forth to meet him. So he smote him and slew him. Many also fell down slain, but the rest fled. So he tried to make war with us and go to battle, but Judas and his soldiers, they was able to overcome him, defeat him, and a lot of them end up retreating and getting away. Wherefore Judas took their spoils upon his sword also, and wherewith he fought all of his life long. So he took he beat him and mistreated him. And after he beat him and mistreated him, he took his sword. He took his weapon from him. That's just like somebody, pull a gun on you, and you beat them up and take their gun from them, right? That's what happened here, right? So then he kept it all of his whole life as a trophy, and fought with it also. And it says, now when Saran, the prince of his army of Assyria, heard and say that Judas had gathered unto him a multitude, a company of the faithful, to go out with him to war, he said, I will give me a name and honor in the kingdom. So this guy, he's like, all right, I see Judas over here, he's defeating everybody, right? And so dude was like, all right, look, if I take out Judas, then I'm gonna get me a reputation, then I'm gonna become great, So that's what way he was looking at it, because how they say, you gotta to be the best, you gotta beat the best, right? So Judas was defeating a lot of his enemies and stuff, causing havoc throughout the Greek Empire. So this guy was like, all right, well maybe I can fix this problem that that the king is having. So then if I fix this problem, then maybe I can get honor, right? So what happened with that? It says, he said, I will get me a name and honor in the kingdom, for I will go and fight with Judas and them that are with him, who despise the king's commandments. So he made him ready to go up, and there went with him a mighty host of the ungodly to help him, and to avenge of the children of Israel. And when he came near to the going up of Bethhoron, Judas went forth to meet him with a small company, who when they saw the host coming to meet them, said unto Judas, how shall we be able being so few to fight against a so great multitude, and so strong, seeing we are ready to faint with fasting all day. So he's like, look, man, we've been fasting all day. There's a big, huge armies coming on us, right? We're not, physically ready to, fight. We're kind of weak, right? And but unto whom Judas answered, it is no hard matter for many to be shut up in the hands of the few, and with God of heaven, it is all of one, to deliver a great multitude or a small company. So it's like, look, we got the power of God behind us, and with Him, it's all the same. It don't matter how many people it is, right? He can, He'll deliver us, right? Because we got the Most High God Yahweh who fight for us. For the victory of battle stand not in a multitude of a host, but the strength cometh from heaven. So our dear brother Judas knew that. You know what I'm saying? He knew that it's not, his, strength that make him so great that he's winning all these battles. He know that it's the Most High God. So they got this big old army coming down on them. So Judas like, look, man, take courage. You know what I'm saying? We got a God that fight for us, right? They came against us in much pride and iniquity to destroy us, and our wives and our children to spoil us. But we fight for our lives and our laws. Therefore, Yahweh Himself will overthrow them before our face. And as for you, be ye not afraid of them. So Judas is pumping them up like, look, man, we got a God that fight for us. They coming to try to take our well-being, destroy our way of life, take our culture, touch our women in ways that we not cool with, take our children and all that stuff. We can't let this happen, right? Letting them know what we fighting for. This is for God and for country, right? Letting them know, right? Then, so now as soon as he had left off speaking, he leaped suddenly upon them, and so Saran and his host was overthrown before them, and they pursued them from going down to Bethhorn unto the plain, were slain about 800 men of them, and the residue fled into the land of the Philistines. So, like I said, so as soon as he finished that speech, he got the people hyped up. They was revved up. They saw the army. They jumped down on them and destroyed them, and chased them off into to the land of the Philistines. Then began the fear of Judas and his brethren, and the exceeding great dread fell upon the nations round about them. So then they start getting a reputation and a reason. Like, these people was kicking up dust. You know what I'm saying? They not, getting down with the program of the Greeks, and they fighting back. So people getting afraid of them. And much as his fame came into the kings of all nations, talk of the battles of Judas. Because he was a great general. He was a great warrior. Just like in our time, we talk about the battles of Caesar and Hannibal and, even Alexander. Even though we kicked his butt, don't ever forget that. You know what I'm saying? That's what we're reading about right now. Right? Don't ever forget that. But they talk about these great generals. So even in that time, he was a great general that, that the people spoke about, right? So, it says, and now when King Antiochus heard of these things, he was full of indignation, wherefore he sent and gathered together all the forces of his realm, even a very strong army. He opened also his treasury and gave his soldiers pay for a year. He like, look, we got to stop this Judas guy, right? We got to stop this guy. I want to stop this man so much. I'm gonna give y'all a year's worth of pay. I'm gonna pay y'all for the whole year already. So just be on call, right? Because this Judas guy is, he's messing up the program, right? He's messing up the hustle. He's making it hot. And it says, he opened up also his treasure and gave his soldiers pay for a year, commanding them to be ready whensoever he should need them. Nevertheless, when he saw that the money of his treasure failed, and that the tribute in the country were small because of the dissension of the plague, because of dissension and plague, because there's a lot of stuff going on. When you get into the history of the land, because you had civil war, you had us fighting each other, then also fighting the Greeks, right? And that was like another key, to our downfall. That also happened with the Romans when the Romans, finally, destroyed us. You had us fighting each other, and then also trying to fight the Romans. So then you have disease and plague and stuff, because the Most High started punishing the land because the people stopped keeping the laws of God. So God, brought the punishments, like we can read about in Deuteronomy 28, right? So that's what we are seeing here. Then it says, and it says, nevertheless, when he saw that the money of his treasure failed, and that the tributes in the country were small because of the dissension and plague which he had brought upon the land, and taken away the laws which had been of old time. So when Antiochus, came into power, and he made the decree that the Israelites cannot follow their own customs and do their own way of life, they have to do what the Greeks do. And then a lot of our people willingly went forward and did it. The Most High God punished the land. He caused a lot of that destruction and stuff that happened, the plagues and all that stuff that we're reading about, and this civil unrest and this anarchy that that you can see when you go through the history of it, right? And that's prevalent amongst our community, because collectively as a people we don't keep the laws of God. That's why we see the trouble in our community like we do. That's why we see all the craziness. We can get on TikTok or Facebook or see some little crazy clip of our people doing something ignorant, right? And because we don't have the laws of God, we don't keep the laws of God, right? And that was what was going on in the city. Dissension, sickness and plague, destruction, war, right? And it says, so he couldn't, because there was so much stuff going on, I mean, he couldn't, get any money because, number one, he got sick people dying, so it's hard to collect the money that he needs to try to get his war theme situated, right? So, and it says, boom, 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 because of the dissension and plague which he had brought upon the land by taking away the laws which had been of old time, he feared that he should not be able to bear the charges any longer, nor have such gifts to give so liberally as he did before. He had abundant above the kings that were before him. So, he was splurging. He spent his time in real estate splurging, tricking off with people, giving gifts to his friends and stuff. He was just doing it, not looking at the books, not, seeing how much money he got left. So he realized he ain't got the money to really fund the war that he trying to have, right? He was trying to get his Memphis Bleak on, right? He was trying to get his money right, his mind right, money right, and get ready for war, right? But his money ain't right. So it says, wherefore being great perplexed in his mind, wherefore being greatly perplexed in his mind, he determined to go into Persia, there to take the tribute of the countries and to gather much money. He left Elias, a nobleman and one of the blood royal, to oversee the affairs of the king from the rivers of from the river Euphrates unto the border of Egypt, to bring up his son Antiochus until he came again. Moreover, he delivered unto him the half of his forces and the elephants, and gave him charge of all things that he would have done also concerning them that dwell in Judah and in Jerusalem. So, he made the Persians give them, half of their stuff, right? He said, left hand give it up, right hand give it up, right? Give me what you got. To wit that he should send an army against them to destroy the root out of the strength of Israel and the remnant of Jerusalem, and to take away their memorial from that place, and that they should place strangers in their quarters and divide their land by lot. So the king took half of the forces and that remained, and departed from Antioch. And says from Antioch, his royal city, the 147 year, having passed the river Euphrates, he went through the high country. Then Elias chose from Ptolemy, the son of Dorames, and Nicanor, and Jorias, and Jorias, mighty men of the king's friends, and with them he sent 40,000 footmen and 7,000 horsemen to go into the land of Judea, and to destroy it, as the king commanded. So they went forth with all their power, and came and pitched by Imanus in the plain country. So he sending his troops to go to war with our brothers down there, right? Then it says, and the merchants in the countries, hearing the fame of them, took silver and gold very much with the service, and came unto the camp to buy the children of Israel for slaves. So there was taking our people, selling them in the market, right, as slaves and stuff, right? Because when you get into the history, we were holding up in Jerusalem, right? Because the Greeks done took the whole land and stuff. That's why when you get into the New Testament, and they talk about Samaria, and you hear Jesus, make the parable about the Good Samaritan, and they talk about the people of Samaria like they just, far away from the land of Israel, but it's a city in Israel, right? Samaria is a city in Israel. It's a northern city in Israel where Israelites lived at, right? But, as we reading, the Greeks came through and bum rushed the whole joint, took over some stuff, right? Occupied some land. So then that forced us back into Jerusalem. That's where we were at, primary in Jerusalem, and, of course, like in that, maybe a little further southern down, right, was up in that area. So then when you get to the New Testament and stuff, that's why like primary, a lot of this stuff take place in Jerusalem and stuff, because that's where most of us was at, because of the persecution of the Greeks and the Romans, So, yeah, right. So yeah, anyway, so it says the merchants of the country, hearing the fame of them, took silver and gold very much with servants, and came into the camps to buy the children of Israel for slaves. A power also of Syria and the land of the Philistines joined themselves unto them. So like I said, those parts of Israel that was being occupied, that was taking our people, put them into the slave market, selling them to different nations, right? Now when Judas and his brethren saw that the misery were multiplied, and that the forces did encamp themselves in their borders, for they knew how the king had given commandment to destroy the people and utterly abolish them. So they said let so they said one to another, let us restore and decay the state of our people, and let us fight for the people in the sanctuary, right? And that's what we got to do, right? We got to restore the decay of our people, right? And that's what they did. They went out and restored the people, right? Let's get this real quick. Let's get Ezekiel 37 real fast, right? Let's get Ezekiel 37. Because that's what we got to do. We got to restore the people, right? And just like how they was restoring the people. It says, they said to one another, let us restore the decayed estate of our people, right? And so let's get this over here. Let's get Ezekiel 37 and 5, right? Ezekiel 37 and 5 says this. Thus said the Lord unto these bones, behold, I will cause breath to enter into you, and ye shall live, right? So that's what we do. We, you know what I'm saying, we restore the decay of our people by teaching them the truth, of the Bible, right? Breaking them out of these strongholds that's called religion that our people find themselves into, right? And teaching them that we got to keep the law, statutes, and commandments, come back to our culture as believing Israelites, right? So it says over here, they said to one another, let us restore the decayed estate of our people, right? So over here in Ezekiel it says, thus said the Lord unto these bones. And we're the bones, the Israelites, the people, we're the bones. It says, behold, I will cause breath to enter into you, and ye shall live. And I will lay sinews upon you, and I will bring flesh upon you, and cover you with skin, and put breath in you. And that breath is that wisdom and understanding that we get from the law, statutes, and commandments, right? That's the breath of life, the law, statutes, and commandments. And ye shall live, and ye shall know that I am the Lord. And it says, so I prophesied as I was commanded, and I prophesied, and there was a noise, and behold, a shaking, and the bones came gathered, and a bone to his bone, right? So the people is coming back, right, being restored, right? So that's what our dear brother Judas and his brothers and his army was going out doing throughout Israel, restoring the people, right, fighting for the people, defending the people, right? Because we have, an enemy that doesn't stop. It's like the Terminator. They keep going, right? And our people need to be protected because our people is like sheep with no shepherd. So they need to be protected. That's why it says, and they said to one another, let us restore the decayed estate of our people, and let us fight for our people in sanctuary, right? So they believe in fighting for the people in their belief, right? And we got to have that same spirit, right? We got to have that same spirit to want to fight for our people and stand on what we believe, right? Then it says, so then the congregation gathered together so that they might be ready for battle, and that they might pray and ask mercy and compassion. And now Jerusalem lay void as a wilderness. There was none of her children that went in or out. The sanctuary also was trodden down, and aliens kept a stronghold. So they were occupying our land. They destroyed it and stuff, right? So then it says the heathen had their habitation in that place, and joy was taken from Jacob, and the pipe of the harp ceased. Because once they came in there, they changed the ordinance, they changed the laws, right? For lack of better terms, they gentrified everything, they changed the way of our living. So that's why when you get to the New Testament, when you see the word Gentile, right, and you see the Israelites, the disciples, speaking of the Gentiles, it's talking about our people that was living in these Greek and Roman providence, that was living like the Greeks and Romans, that was taking on their customs, because it all started back right here when we weren't allowed to live like Israelites. Just like over here in America, we wasn't allowed to identify as whatever we was calling ourselves on the west coast of Africa. It was like, what's your name, boy? And if you said Kunta, you probably got hit. You know, if you didn't say Toby or something like that, you probably got beat up. Pretty bad until you said Toby, right? So the culture got beat out of us, right? And so by the time you get to the New Testament, those Gentiles that the epistles are being written to are Israelites that are scattered in those different provinces, right? So back over here. So it says, so now Jerusalem lay void as wilderness, and there was none of her children that went in and out. The sanctuary also was trodden down, and the aliens kept the stronghold, the heathen in their habitation in that place. The heathen had their habitation in that place, and joy was taken from Jacob, and the pipe of their heart ceased, because again we wasn't living like our customs and culture got taken from us. We wasn't, and laws were put in place that we can't do this or can't do that. So it wasn't fun being an Israelite, during that day. And it says, therefore the Israelites assembled themselves together and came to Maphah over against Jerusalem, for in Maphah was the place where they prayed aforetime in Israel. And then they fast that day, and put on sackcloth, and cast ashes on their heads, and rent their clothes, right? And so they like, all right, look, we gotta get this together, right? We ain't going out like no punks, right? And what they do, it says they laid open the book of the law. So they put out the scriptures, right? Because that's what we did. We put out the scriptures to get the guidance. But what was going on? Because we got to understand this devil that we go against, right? These people that we, is at war with constantly, right? This everlasting battle. They always been who we say they were, right? And they always did the things that they been doing. And because this is what happened. It says they laid open the book of the law, wherein the heathen, which would be the other nations, the heathen had sought to paint their likeness in their image of their images, right? Doesn't that sound familiar, right? It says the heathen, it says, and laid open the book of the law, where the heathen had sought to paint their likeness of their images. Because, when we read earlier, I believe in the chapter before, it speaks about how they went to war with, this guy, and they end up taking our scriptures back, right? So now these people always been wanting to try to incorporate themselves into our Bible, into our story, our history, right? That's why, even back then, they were trying to make the scriptures match their culture, make it Hellenistic to what they had got going on, right? And 2,000 years later, they finally succeeded to the point where we have 40,000 denominations of Christianity. That's true. I looked it up. 40,000. I don't know where that came from, but that's what's going on. Then all these different religions, right? You have movies that they propagate, with the characters not looking like the people of the Bible. They're looking like someone else, right? Because you got Charleston Heston, Gerard Butler, Liz Taylor, all these people, playing these biblical characters when the Bible describes them one way, right? That's because it says, and laid open the book of the law, wherein the heathen sought to paint the likeness of their images, right? And that's what they always wanted to do. That's because we have the greatest story that ever been told, right? Everybody want a piece of this book. It's no wonder that a lot of religions are similar in certain ways. Like whenever somebody want to try to, come at the Bible and stuff like that, when they really come in at Christianity, because, the Bible has nothing to do with Christianity, but whenever you have those people that want to debate against Christianity, and they be like, oh, well, Christianity is similar to this and similar to that. I mean, yeah, they right. Because the heathen had sought to paint their likeness of their images, right? So that's why a lot of these stories are so similar, because they wanted to try to incorporate themselves into the book, right? To try to say, well, I like that part, so let us take a whole little story and make something out of that, right? And they've been doing it, right? And they finally did it, and they master it with Catholicism, right? That was it started back here in the time of the Maccabees, and then they finally mastered it, right? They finally mastered it with Catholicism, because when you look into the Catholic religion, which is Christianity comes from, whether people like it, believe it, or understand it or not, right? When you look at it, right, a lot of their saints is predicated off of characters of the Bible, or they would take a like Saint Guadalupe, right? I know a lot of my Hispanic brothers and sisters gonna kill me. They ain't gonna like this one, but Saint Guadalupe was a Mexican goddess, right? Some type of deity, some female deity that the ancient I believe, I don't want to lie, either the Aztec or the Incas, they used to deify and worship. So when they came over to propagate their Christianity, one of the rules of Christianity is if you go to one of these nations and they got a deity, don't take their deity away from them. Just change it up, put a little Christian spin on it. So they took, I forgot the original name of that female goddess that they used to worship, but then they, just took all the qualities of that and gave it to Saint Guadalupe, right? So people that follow Saint Guadalupe is actually following a pagan nature god, right? So anyway, Wisdom of Solomon chapter 14 verse 12 real quick. Let's read this, because they've been doing this for years. They've been trying to rewrite history and put themselves in our book to the point where we think God loves everybody and Jesus died for the whole wide world in his hand, when the Bible doesn't say that, and we can read it and we see that it doesn't say that. But religion, Christianity specifically, has corrupted the minds of everybody. Christianity is so effective, you don't even have to be a Christian. It's just that the atmosphere is Christianity. It's like you talk to a person that probably say, yeah, I don't go to church, I've never been to church, but then you get their little concept of the Bible or concept of God. It's very Christian-like, and it's not their fault, because they don't even try. It's just that this world that we live in is propagated off of lies, and it's so prevalent that it bleeds on everybody. Even if you don't, I was talking to my brother-in-law a while back, before he started kind of somewhat getting into the truth, and he was, saying something, and he was at a point where, he didn't, believe in the Bible, but I think now, certain things are changing, right? But but the stuff he was saying and the way he was coming from, I was telling him, like, dude, you sounded like a Christian, right? And kind of got upset when I said it, because he didn't want to identify as a Christian. But like I said, Christianity is so prevalent in this society. Even if you've never been to church, like, your concept of the Bible and God is going to have a little Christian seasoning on it some type of way, right? And just understand why. It says, for devising of idols was the beginning of spiritual fornication, and invention of them the corruption of life. For neither were they from the beginning, neither shall they be forever. For by vainglory of men they enter into the world, and therefore shall they comes shortly into an end, right? Because they're just idols, right? It don't mean nothing, right? People make stuff up, right? Then it says, for a father, this is the point. So this is talking about Pope Pius the Sixth. How many people know about Pope Pius the Sixth? Famous guy, right? Everybody know Pope Pius the Sixth, right? At least you know his son, right? Everybody know his son, right? Kodak Black told you if you don't got a Jesus piece, you don't believe in Jesus, right? That little Jesus piece that everybody like to rock, that little portrait that grandma got in her living room, a white Jesus with the little hair flowing down and her brown eyes. He just have a blank stare on his face, looking like he saw a ghost, right? Looking like he saw the real Jesus. He like, oh my God, that's the real Jesus, right? That guy, right? That everybody see, right? Let's see, right? This is our, let's see what's going on here. So it says, when you understand the story of Pope Pius, so his son, Caesar Borgia, right? That's the guy that actually posed for the picture of the so-called famous Jesus picture, that portrait that everybody have in their living room, right? And hanging on their neck or tattooed on their arm, right? They got some type of little homicidal, sociopathic, homosexual, incestual, murderous, tyrant man tatted on their body, and they wonder why they're crazy, right? So, cause you got that spirit, right? This stuff is heavy, right? So, this is what we're reading about here, right? This is the prophecy of that, right? So, it says, for a father afflicted with untimely mourning when he had made an image of his child. Because when you understand the story of Pope Pius VI, his son, Caesar Borgia, he got sick because the guy was a freak. He's a very nasty, disgusting man, right? Had incest with his sister, had a homosexual relationship with Leonardo da Vinci, was a murderous man, killed his mother, I believe. He did a lot of horrible things. And then after he did those horrible things, he posed for the picture of Jesus, right? And now that's propagated all over the world. Everybody looking at this murderous, satanic, what's the other word I'm looking for? Sadist man as Christ. And if you better not say, oh, that's the devil, right? If you point at the picture of white Jesus right now and tell somebody that's the devil, somebody will kill you, right? Not knowing the history of that picture or where that actual image of that man come from. We're reading it, right? It says, a father inflicted with untimely mourning when he had made an image of his child, soon taken away, not now honored as a god. And that's what happened. People look at that white Jesus as a god, right? You better not say anything bad about that white Jesus on that picture. What's wrong with you? Right? Better not call that man the devil, right? Don't take that picture and throw it in the garbage, right? Remember the mother off of Good Times? She was very mad at little Michael for telling her that the real Jesus is black, right? Got upset with the man, right? Then it says, for a father afflicted with untimely mourning when he had made an image of his child, soon taken away, now honored as a god, which was then a dead man, and delivered to those that were under him ceremonies and sacrifice. So that's what happened. So his son was dying, so he had his son pose for that picture. They took that picture, put it on their little Mayflower, on their boats, and they went around the world holding that picture, telling everybody, this is your Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. The power of Christ compels you. The fire of Christ compels you. Was that the Exodus movie? Right? The power of Christ compels you. Right? So they went around with that image, right? And the image is actually of a real life historical man named Cedric Borgia. Showtime had a show a while back called The Borgia Family, the first crime family. These guys are the first crime family. right? The first Italian mob family, right? Everybody talk about the Gambinos and the other guys, right? But the Borgias, right? So then it says, thus in the process of time, a ungodly custom grew strong, was kept as law. So now the whole world, believe in this white Jesus, and you better not say that he's black, because you're crazy if you call him black, even though the Bible calls him black. But you're crazy if you call him that, because it says, what happened? It says, thus in process of time, the ungodly custom grew strong and was kept as law. And a engraven image were worshipped by the commandments of kings. So now, all these so-called Christian nations is forcing the people to worship this, right? We have the what's that stuff? The manifest destiny, right? When they went around the world enslaving everybody under the name of Christianity, right? And for the queen, right? That's what happened. And it says, in whom men could not honor in presence because they dwelt far off, they took counterfeit of his vintage. So they painted that picture, because since you couldn't go to Rome and praise the man, like, hey, let's go make this picture, get your little pocket-sized picture. Hey, you know what? Hey, matter of fact, tattoo it on your arm, right? Why don't you get a little tattoo of a little Jesus dude? Like, I think Lil Wayne or some little body got the little Jesus face thing on his neck, right? Why don't you get one of those, right? Do that stuff, right? Get the little, go to grandma's house. I'm pretty sure she got a white Jesus hanging up, right? So it says, whom when men could not honor in present because they dwelt far off, they took the counterfeit of his image, of his vintage, from far, and made an express image of a king who they honored to the end that by this their forwardness they might flatter him that was absent as if he were present. So they went around pushing that Caesar Borgia as Jesus Christ of Nazareth, right? And everybody believed it. And you bet not say anything like, let somebody post a picture of white Jesus on social media that somebody say, that's not Jesus, that's the devil. Somebody gonna cut you out. That person probably gonna curse you out. You're gonna be the worst person in the world, right? And not knowing that is a counterfeit image, like we just read. The counterfeit of his vintage from fire made an express image of the king whom they honored, to the end that by this their foreignness they might flatter him that was absent as he were present. Also the singular diligence of their artificer did help to set forward the ignorance to more superstition, right? And that's what happened. That our people are very superstitious when it comes to Christianity. That's why so many people is about to put up that tree. They probably already got a tree up, right? They got the tree up, right? Because they're so superstitious. And they're not going to take it down because, it's, to them, they celebrating a birthday. They're doing something holy. They're doing something Christian. They're doing something very Christian, right? And this is what God wants, and this is what we're doing, right? And that's what they're thinking, right? But what does it say? It says, also the singular diligence of the artificer did help to set forward the ignorance to more superstition, right? That's what this stuff is. That's what Christianity is, superstition, because it's based off of paganism, right? And that's a provable thing, right? The disciples were not calling themselves Christians, right? That's not what they said. When you see, if they were being called Christians, it was being used in a derogatory way. That is a historical fact, right? The same way how people call you the N-word. They're not calling you an N-word because that's a cool thing, and they think you might like it. They call you an N-word because they know that it's a disrespectful thing, right? That's the same thing back then. It's just that over time, words change and people adapted, just like how we say, okay, well, we're going to start calling ourselves N-words, right? So if that's understandable, then you should be able to understand that Christianity was, to call somebody a Christian, that was a derogatory term, right? So we got to understand that. Then it says, for he preventure willing to please one in authority force all his skill to make the resemblance of the best fashion. So Leonardo put his best work into painting that Jesus portrait, right? That's why it's so famous now. They even put a statue in South America, Brazil. They got the world's biggest Jesus statue, and I think they even got one in Nigeria somewhere, right? So Leonardo put his heart and soul into that image because he had it. That was his lover, right? That was his he didn't want to have to go home and be laying next to Caesar Borgia, and Caesar Borgia like, man, why you paint me like that? You know what I'm saying? Why you make me look like that? So you have to make sure you get it right. Then it says, for he preventure willing to please one in authority force all his skill to make the resemblance of the best fashion. So the multitude, allured by the grace of the work, took him now for a god. And now we look at this image of this white Jesus as the Son of God. You ask the average person, you show that picture to the average person walking down the street, who is this guy? They're going to say, oh, that's Jesus Christ, right? They're not going to tell you that's a murderous, incestuous, homosexual maniac, psychopathic killer. They're not going to tell you that when they look at that picture. They're going to say, oh, no, that's the Son of God. Because it been propagated to be so. When this guy is a murderer, when you get into the history of who that guy really is, where that image comes from, right? So that's just the facts, right? So it says, so the multitude, allured by the grace of the work, and took him now for a god, which a little more before was but a honor as a man. So just a little bit before Leonardo decided to paint this man and say, okay, yeah, this is going to be the image of Christ, go get it to the Catholic Church and push it around the world. Before they decided to do that, he was just a man, a disgusting, vile man that liked to lay in the same bed with his sister with no clothes on and do the same thing with a man, right? I mean, that's, then also kill a whole bunch of people. I mean, that's just what he was, right? So it says, and this was an occasion to deceive the world. And that's what happened. It deceives the world. Because everybody look at that image and say, oh, that's Jesus Christ. That's the Son of God. That's Jesus, right? Everybody look at that image and say that. It deceived the world. Because the Bible tells us he's a dark-skinned man, right? That guy is not dark-skinned, right? The Bible says he has fiery eyes. He don't have fiery eyes. He has blue, sensitive, recessive eyes. That's what he has, right? The Bible says his hair was like wool. He don't have woolly hair. He has doggy, stringy, goat-like hair, right? That's what he has. So it says, and this was the occasion to deceive the world for men serving either calamity or tyranny. Did ascribe unto stones and stocks an incommunicable name. Moreover, this was not enough for them that they erred in knowledge. So it's not enough for our people to err in knowledge, because a lot of people will say, well, we know Jesus is not white. We know Jesus was black. Right? We knew Jesus was black. Right? Jesus was black. Right? We knew that. But they still go to church and listen to a pastor kick up a whole bunch of lies. Right? So you can't, how could you trust anything? Like, when the thing came to you packaged in a lie. Right? So how could you then therefore go all in and be like, all right, well, okay, they lied about that, but I guess everything else is cool, right? If they lie about something else, I'm sure they will tell us, right? That's crazy, right? But it says, moreover, this was not enough for them, that they err. So it's not enough that we err and that we follow these false religions and stuff. We be like, all right, okay, well, I know that's not what it is, but it feels good. It's no harm in it. It's alright, right? I'm not hurting nobody. It ain't gonna hurt nobody, right? That's what I'm thinking. But it says, moreover, this is not enough for them, that they err in knowledge of God, but whereas they live in great war of ignorance, those so great plagues called peace. Those so great plagues they call peace, right? And that's the crazy part. Our people are so wrapped up in these fake religions that they follow, Christianity and stuff, right? And don't even realize when God is jacking them up for following these false religions. That's why it says, whereas they live in great war of ignorance, those so great plagues they call peace. So our people don't even know when they're just in in a bad spot. They don't know that they're following a lie, right? They just like, oh, well, it feels good, it makes me feel good, it got me off of drugs, and I'm doing this, I'm doing that. The Bible says you call, in your ignorance, you call it peace, right? Not knowing that you is caught up in what it says, live in the great war of ignorance, who's so great plagues they call peace. So when you got all these different stuff happening in your life, not understanding, is because you're not doing what the Most High God told you, not keeping the law, statutes, and commandments. You're following a false religion, right? So He's going to be jacking you up from time to time, but then what it say? Those so great plagues they call peace. So it's like we so down and out, and so out, don't know which way is up. We don't even know when we getting punished. That's how bad our life is. That's how messed up our situations is. That when the Lord is punishing us, we got it so bad we don't even see that we getting punished. We just like, oh well, that's just what it is, But not understanding it's these false religions that get us jacked up, right? So back over here, where are we at? Oh, let's get one more too. Let's get Job 9:24. So we see that how they painted these different images, right? And over here, Job 9:24 says this: the earth is given into the hand of the wicked, and we know who rules the world, right? The earth is given into the hands of the wicked, right? And who rules the world is not who Beyonce says. It says, He covered the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is He? Right? So they covered the faces of the judges, right? By whitewashing them, right? By giving you these white images or these watered down depictions of these people, right? And the Bible calls them wicked. It says, the earth is given into the hands of the wicked. He covered the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is He? Right? And that's what they do. They cover the faces of the judges by, when you go to their little cathedrals and you see Peter and Paul and Jesse, James and Billy the Badass, they all painted white, right? You know, Billy the Badass is probably actually white. You know, you look at the westerns, but that's besides the point. You get what I'm saying? So, Earth was given into the hands of the wicked. All right, back over here. And it says Maccabees, First Maccabees 3. And boom, 3:48. So it says, and laid open the book of the law wherein the heathen had sought to paint the likeness of their image. So we saw how they do that. We went through it, right? We know the history how they try to incorporate themselves into our book, right? That's why we got a million religions to this day. Then it says, they brought also the priest's garments and the first fruits and the tithes and the Nazarites they stir up and had accomplished their days. Then cried they with a loud voice towards heaven, saying, what shall we do with these? And rather shall we carry them away? For thy sanctuary is trodden down and profaned, and thy priests are heaviness and brought low. And lo, that the heathen are assembled together against us to destroy us. What things they might imagine against us, thou knowest. How shall we be able to stand against them, except thou, O God, be our help? Right? So they like, look, man, we got these heathen trying to get down on us. We need the Most High God help, right? And it says, then sounded they with the trumpets and cried with a loud voice. After this, Judas ordained captains over people, even captains over thousands, over hundreds, and over fifties, and over tens. So he set up an order to protect the people. He set up, for lack of better terms, like a military or police force to help protect the people from the outside forces, right? So he set up leadership to help the people, right? That they can depend on, right? And it says, but as for much as the building houses or had brought betrothed wives but as much as were building houses or had betrothed wives or planting vineyards or were fearful, those he commanded that they should return every man to his house according to the law. So they camp remove and pitch upon the south side of Emmaus. So he's like, look, all you people that feeling like Trey from Boys in the Hood, hey, don't let me out, take your ass back home. All the warriors come with me. And just get it on, right? That's basically what happened right there, right? So then, and Judas said, arm yourselves and be valiant men, and see that ye be in readiness against the morning, that ye may fight with these nations that are assembled together against us to destroy us in our sanctuary. For it is better for us to die in battle than to behold the calamities of our people in our sanctuary. Nevertheless, as the will of God is in heaven, so let him do. So so Judas was pumping the people up like, look, I'd rather die on my feet, right, than live on my knees, right? So we got to be like that. Judas was a brave man, and he had a brave army with him, right? And they was outnumbered. When you get into these battles, oftentimes, a lot of times we were outnumbered, but we have the Most High God with us to fight with us, because he fights our battles, right? And it doesn't matter how many, right? So Judas was letting the people know, like, look, we got the Most High God with us, so get yourself ready, right? And be ready to fight these different nations, because, it's going to go down tomorrow, right? And be brave. Right, let's get let's jump up to Second Maccabees, right? I know we're jumping to a whole nother book, but again, I'm just trying to cover as much of this as possible, right? Because again, we're not gonna be able to read everything. But let's try to cover as much of this as possible. So let's get chapter 2. Let's get chapter 2. I think we left off, chapter 1 yesterday. Let's get chapter 2. And so yeah. So then it says, it was also found in the record that Jeremy the prophet commanded them that were carried away to take the fire that have been sanctified, and how that the prophet, having given them the law, charged them not to forget the commandment of the Lord, and that they should not err in their mind when they see images of silver and gold with their ornaments, and with other such speeches he exalted them, that the law should not depart from their hearts. Right. So reminding them, the prophecies of Jeremiah, right, and how he was, talking to the people and encouraging them, right, spiritually. And it says, it also contained in the same writing that the prophet, being warned of God, commanded the tabernacle of the ark to go with him as he went forth into the mountains where Moses climbed up and saw the heritage of God. And when Jeremy came hither, he found a hollow cave wherein he laid the tabernacle and the ark and the altar of incense, and so stopped the door. So it's given the story about Jeremiah when, I believe it was the Babylonians came in. So Jeremiah hit the ark, he hit the testimony and stuff like that, and he hit it in the same mountain that Moses was buried in. And that's why too, like, let's keep reading real quick. Then it says, and some that follow him came to mark the way, but they could not find it. Which when Jeremy perceived, he blamed them, saying, as for that place, it shall be unknown until the time that God gather his people again together and receive them unto mercy. Then shall the Lord show them these things, and the glory of the Lord shall appear in a cloud also, and it was showed under Moses. And as when Solomon desired that the place might be honorably sanctified, so it was declared that he, being wise, offered a sacrifice of dedication and finished the temple. Right. So that's why too, like, what I was gonna say was, you have these documentaries or these shows or whatever. They talk about the Ark of the Covenant, right? They say, oh yeah, the Ark of the Covenant is over here, it's over there, it's in Ethiopia, and blah 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 blah, right? Here's the thing: if you're gonna believe the Bible, right, which I do, you're gonna believe the Bible, and if you understand the power of the covenant, or the power that that God, the Spirit of God over the Ark of the Covenant, should I say it like that? Then you cannot believe that anybody has the Ark of the Covenant in their possession, right? Without something very terrible happening to them, right? And as we read here, Jeremiah took the ark and hid it into a place where it's not going to be found. And then the Most High took it up to heaven. So when this whole thing is all said and done, right? Jesus come back, right? Then the Most High appears in the heavens, then that's when the ark is going to show back up, because it says it's going to, when the gathering of the people, then the ark is going to be around. So all these different people talking about, oh yeah, the ark of the covenant, nah. But number one, if you have the ark of the covenant, you would have been probably passed away from cancer, some type of horrible disease, and all that stuff would have overtook you and everybody else that's around it. If you understand the functions of the ark, right? So anyway, and as when Moses prayed unto the Lord, the fire came down from heaven and consumed the sacrifice. Even so prayed Solomon also, the fire came down from heaven and consumed the burnt offerings. And Moses said, because the sin offerings was not to be eaten, it was consumed. So Solomon kept those 8 days, right? And the same thing also were reported in the writings of the commandments of Nehemiah, and how he founded the library together the acts of the kings and the prophets and of David, and the epistles of the kings concerning the holy gifts. In like manner also Judas gathered together all those things that were lost by reason of war we had, and they remain with us. So Judas, they got all of our holy relics back that was taken and all that stuff, so we can rededicate the temple, right? And it says, therefore, if we have need thereof, send to fetch them unto you, whereas then are about the celebrate of purification we have written unto you, and ye shall do well if ye keep the same. So laying down the ordinance of this new law that we're going to be keeping, this new holiday, known as the Feast of Dedication, right? Hanukkah, to those. Then it says, we hope also that God that deliver us all his people and give them all a heritage in the kingdom, and that in the priesthood and sanctuary. And he promised in the law will surely have mercy upon us and gather us together of every land under heaven unto the holy place. For he hath delivered us out of great troubles and have purified the place. Now as concerning Judas Maccabees and his brothers, in the purification of the temple, and the dedication of the altar, and the wars against Antiochus Epiphanes, and the Antipater his son, and the manifest signs that came from heaven unto those that behave themselves manfully unto their honor to their honor for Judaism. So being but a few, they overcome the whole country and chase barbarous multitudes. So again, it's not about the number. There's few in number, and they were still able to overcome these armies that came against them, right? Because again, the Most High God doesn't deal with, how they say, it's strict in numbers. The Most High God don't deal with numbers, right? He can, beat you with one person, right? So he can beat you with a person that have no legs, right? Like let me try not to be too silly, but what is Eddie Murphy from Trading Places? I have no legs, right? He can beat you with a person with no legs. That's what the Most High does, right? So it's not about the numbers. So it says, right now, boom, 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 and recover again the temple, renowned of all the world over, and freed the city, and upheld the law which were going down the Lord being gracious unto them with favor. So he was able to restore Jerusalem. Get the temple and everything back functioning. Everybody keeping the law. Keeping these ordinances, right. And it says and all things I say being declared by Jason of Siren in the 5 books we will say to abridge in 1 volume, for considering the infinite number and the difficulties which they find that desire to look into the narrations of the story for the variety of the matter. We have been careful that they that will read may have delight, and that they are desirous and committed to the memory that have ceased, and that all unto to whom's hands come might have profit, right? So they like, look, we building up this temple, we're getting it beautified and glorified, so everybody can profit. Now, although like Martin Luther King said, I might not get there with you, right? And they understood, and they was cool with that. Like, look, we built this temple, we rebuilt it, we fixing up Jerusalem. We might not be able to see the full benefits and be the full benefactors of our works, but this is for the next generation, right? This is for the people, right? And they understood that. Let's get Nehemiah really quick. Okay, Nehemiah 4 and 17, right? So again, they had a hard time. They had to fight off an army, right? A lot of armies. They had to battle, right? Then they had to go into the city, retake the temple. Get the holy relics back. They was doing a lot of fighting and stuff, right, for the people. And they still got to fight. The story ain't over, right? We only in chapter 2. Story ain't over, right? Chapter 3, whatever. Chapter 2. So yeah, Nehemiah 4 and 17, right? Let's get an understanding, because our dear brother Nehemiah and them, they had similar experience, trying to, rebuild the temple and, and get things back, situated, right? They also had a hard time, in that feat, right? So let's get this. Nehemiah 4 and 17. And they which built the wall, they that was built on the wall, and they that were barren, with those that laid in every one, and with his hand wrought in work, and with the other hand held a weapon. So check this out. So they're working, building up the walls of the temple, right? Laying brick and mortar. So they got the spade or the spatula and stuff, and in one hand, and they got they sword in the other hand, right? For battle. So they fighting and building at the same time. How difficult that is? Imagine, you trying to build a house, right? So as you building a house, you gotta put your tool down and bust a few shots at some people, and you gotta duck a few shots, right? But you still gotta keep building, because you gotta build the house. That's what they were doing. They was fighting a war at the same time building the temple. They had a sword in one hand, and they worked tool in another hand, fighting and building. That's very, very difficult. That's a very tough thing to do, right? And but they had to do that. So I'm just illustrating how also our brothers, right here, our Maccabean brothers, they had a difficult time, right, trying to rededicate this temple. They had a lot of fighting they had to do, right? So it says, therefore, to us that have taken upon this painful labor and abiding, it was not easy, but a matter of sweat and watching. So meaning like, look, we have to be patient, a lot of hard work and patience, to get to this point, right? Because they did have to wait it out. They got ran out of the city, right? Then they have to fight their way back into the city, right? Then you had, traders and people, turning against them and all that. It was crazy, right? So it says, but the matter of sweat and watching, even as it is, is no ease to them that prepare a banquet and seek the benefit of others, and yet for pleasuring of many, we will undertake gladly this great pain, this great pains. So just like we were saying, like, sometimes you end up doing something and you don't reap the benefits yourself. Be for the next generation, be for the next people. But you established it. You got that thing established, and it's a well-oiled machine, and it's working properly, right? Just like how the example that Jay-Z used about Kanye West a while back. He said Kanye is like the cowboy that that runs across the plain and get all the Indians to shoot all the arrows at him to get everybody else safely across, right? So they understood their sacrifice in rebuilding this temple and dedicating that. They knew that they, probably won't live long enough to see the full benefits of it, but it's for the people. And that's why they wanted to make this holiday and commemorate this day, right? And we celebrate it for 8 days, right? So it says, even as it was no ease unto them that prepared a banquet and seeking a benefit of others, and yet the pleasuring of many will overtake gladly this great pain. So they like, look, the fact that knowing that the people is gonna take joy in this, and and we can take pride in knowing that we got something that the people is gonna enjoy for years to come. That's good enough for us. You know what I'm saying? We ain't gotta live long enough to see everything play out. You know what I'm saying? As long as we know it's gonna survive us, live, past us, right? That's what they was on, right? So it says, even as it is no ease unto them that prepare a banquet and seeking the benefits of others, for yet for the pleasuring of many, we will undertake gladly this pain, leaving to the author the exact handling of every particular, and laboring to follow the rules of a abridgment, for as the master builder of a new house must care for the whole building, but he that undertaketh to set out and paint it must seek out fit things for the adoring thereof. Even so, I think it is with us. So it's like, look, we gotta make sure we get all the right, proper, things to beautify the temple. Make sure we, keep that in mind. We want to, make this temple beautiful. Keep it decorated nice, right, with all the finest things that we can find, right? Then it says, you're like, just keep that in mind. We want to make this temple beautiful. Keep it, glory. Let this be the pride of our land, right? And it says, to stand upon every point and to go over things at large, and to be curious in particulars, belong to the first author of the story. But to use brevely, and to avoid much laboring, of the work is to grant him that will make a abroadment. Here then we will begin the story, only adding thus much that which had been said, that is a foolish thing to make a long prologue and to be a short story itself. So yeah, we're gonna end it there with that. So again, so our brothers, they rededicate the temple. They get, setting up the ordinance. Giving instructions on how to keep it, and we keep it just like we would keep the Feast of Tabernacle. You keep it for 8 days. The first day is like a Sabbath. Meaning you do it like a Sabbath. No working, no buying, no selling. Then on the 8th day, same deal, right? But it's a glorious thing. We celebrate, we party. Like Rick James says, we drink and be merry. You know what I'm saying? We have fun, right? And you enjoy it, right? It's a very fun time. If you want, some people give gifts for the whole 8 days. Some people, they wait till the Feast of Purim to do the gift giving. So yeah, very exciting, great holiday. So hopefully that was edifying. Got a little understanding of history of our Maccabean brothers and how they was getting down and fought for our nation, right? And so we can have a place to worship, right? And fought against the tyranny of the Greeks and the Romans. So I'm gonna say shalom, peace. Hopefully that was edifying. Till next time, we out. Shalom.